Good evening. So just a really quick update, to be honest, on both the higher time frame and the shorter time frame moves that would expect with Ethereum at the moment. So on the higher time frame, you can see this top trend line here, which I would ignore this little section here, mainly just because when you go onto the weekly, it kind of disappears. So it's a bit of a fake break out of that channel. So you've got these top levels here. So you've got what would be a top here. You've got your two attempts up here, two attempts up here, and currently the first attempt at taking this level out. So the expectation on the market is for this to kind of broke the 4K area and for it to have a move directly up now into the early fives is probably the general sentiment that I'm seeing, or the general consensus anyways. So what we'll want to look at here is if you just kind of remove some of these trend lines and boxes, because this is a little bit of a mess, is this top trend here and this bottom trend here. So you remove this top breakout here and the bottom breakout here, and what you have is actually a compression. And normally you want to look for the last 20% of the compression for it to break out. Now, I do think Ethereum is going to break out to the upside, but what I'm super conscious of here is when you just zoom in on the shorter time frame, the black line was the top of the channel here, and this was your horizontal trend line from, if you just zoom out, you can see around these areas. Didn't quite hit some of them, but it did back here. So this was the area where I wanted to see a potential layer out of the entries that I had from earlier on. Started a layer out now. I do expect this to have another attempt at breaching to the upside. And if you just have a look when you zoom in, right on the 1 hour chart, so we're really on the shorter time frame here, is something I call the three peaks. So what you have is something along the lines of this. And you've got, at the moment, you have peak 1, 2, and then we're looking for number 3. So 3 would probably have to come around here for it to be a 3 peaks. Any further on than that, it would become obsolete. But you also have, on the shorter time frame here, a bit of a head and shoulders playing out as well. So you've got this level, and then what I always look for is, and if you have a head and shoulders, is it to be either falling or rising. So if you just look on the shorter time frame here, you want your trend line to be connecting to as many areas as possible. So maybe something along those lines, or if you just bring it down ever so slightly, something along those lines. Now, if you get this to play out, you've got what I would call an X crossover here, which is 2 levels of resistance. So then you would get something like that move there, up there, back up, and then a punch back down to the early 4000s. Now, if this does happen, that does give the probability of a further extension to the upside, kind of pushing further. So that at that point, it's where you start kind of reassessing the bearish mentality. When I say bearish on a shorter time frame, let's not get them confused, because I do think Ethereum has scope for much further to the upside here. But overall, what I would kind of expect to play out here, basically a setup that, I'm not going to lie, is one that I go on and on about inside my Discord. So if you are interested in joining the Discord, I'll leave the link in the description. What we do in the Discord is pretty much primarily focus around the technical analysis side, but also putting a good emphasis on the economics and the market psychology as well. Trading, to me, and investing is all about risk management and not just diving in and hoping that you get a solid 10x trade. The goal should always be to manage and try to compound your investments. So yeah, we've got the markets and technical analysis channel, we've got the economics, got the social hub where everybody can kind of socialize, ask questions and so on. And we're now currently building the next few categories, which will be the trading setups, which are all the unique ones which I've created myself. And after that, we'll also have the basics of trading as well. So yeah, if you're interested, feel free to click the link down below. Yeah, so basically, once we kind of see this move up here, you've got the 3 peaks, which the 3 peaks looks something like this. So the 3 peaks, you have each peak building up. Once you've got your final peak, you sometimes have a little bit of price action within that. But what you generally get at that point is a pullback to the downside, and then it'll flick back up, and one of the peaks will act as resistance and fall further to the downside. So just to kind of show you what I mean by that is you would get a move up into these levels. Once you get that, you then come tumbling back down, you get a bounce, and either that level, or that level will then act as resistance. So you might get a breakdown that way, you could move up, get a breakdown that way, or you could move up again and then get a breakdown. One of these will act as resistance. And when you start getting that pullback like this in Ethereum, you'll start getting some pretty big pullbacks in alts. So a lot of these alts here are starting to near local levels of resistance. So you've got Casper coming up here. It's had the wonky W play out, which if you haven't seen, is on my previous video. And yeah, you're starting to head into some key levels here. So what I call the Eiffel Tower. So you've got to move up here. This is a key area. So Casper moves up. Tau moves up into these areas. If you look at XRP, these are just drawings from a video for the Discord earlier. But basically, if you look at XRP here, you're starting to see the move up lose a little bit of momentum. But at this point, I would expect a little bit of a bounce, because if you just zoom in, you get any form of curvature within a move down like that, you do expect a little bit of a kick like that. A really good example of that is actually the Ethereum Bitcoin chart. And that is the perfect example of kind of having that curvature down on the higher time frame. So there's a perfect example of it here. Look, if you just probably look better on the logarithmic chart, but you get this curve down and then you get the bounce out. Once you get the bounce and you start heading into these X crossover areas, solid level of resistance, should get a bit of a pullback. So yeah, let's kind of just wait and see what this looks like on the shorter term move, because the higher time frame kind of doesn't give much to go off right now. So yeah, a little bit of rejection, happy days. If you get your rejection immediately now, then that kind of changes things a little bit, because that means that the pullbacks came quite early, as opposed to seeing this move play out first. So pullback relatively soon, we're probably going to see a bounce and then further move to the upside. Or we'll get this move, the three peaks plays out. This is the manipulative area where headlines start going ballistic, everybody's diving in, and then we see one last leg in Bitcoin dominance kind of bouncing back to the upside with the further falling to come after that. So that would look something like, you see a little bit of an inverted head and shoulders forming here. That would look something like this, breaking up here. Perfect trend line across. We'll just draw an actual trend line in. Perfect trend line across here. This level would be in a few days' time. If that doesn't quite play out, then you could potentially extend this out. So if we just extend this trend line out, what you could get is something along the lines of this area being the key zone. Get rid of that. This area being the key zone. And then as you come along, you start to get a little bit more of a reprieve. And then this area, or this area with a wick up, would be the area of rejection. And then you get your continuation. I just can't see Bitcoin folding over and Bitcoin dominance not performing well in the short term. Everything's set up really well for the manipulative move with Ethereum. So yeah, hope that makes sense, and peace out.